Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into this absolutely incredible ancient story about a prophet who set the perfect trap, all to deliver a message that nobody, and I mean nobody, wanted to hear. Think about it. It's a problem we still have today, right? So let's explore how this prophet Amos solved it almost 3,000 years ago with this brilliantly constructed argument that backed his audience into a corner they never, ever saw coming. First things first. To really get the genius of this trap, you have to understand the world Amos was walking into. It's all about the context. So, you got to put yourself in their shoes. The year is 760 BC. The biggest threat in the region, the Assyrian Empire, is kind of quiet for a little while. And that means for Israel, times are good. They're feeling secure, they're wealthy, and let's be honest, probably a little smug. Trouble seemed like a million miles away. And into this scene walks Amos. And this guy is the last person they'd ever listen to. He's not a professional prophet from the royal court. No, he's a shepherd. And even worse, he's from Judah, the rival southern kingdom. So this is basically like someone from the rival team's town showing up to tell you your team is terrible. He was not going to be popular. Now, at the time, the people of Israel were all looking forward to something they called the Day of the Lord. For them, this was going to be the ultimate victory party, a day of light where God would finally smash all their enemies and put Israel on top for good. Now, keep this expectation in your back pocket. It is the absolute key to the entire trap. Okay, so here's where the trap starts to get set. Amos opens his prophecy, and at first, the crowd in Israel would have been eating it up. Why? Because he starts by judging all their enemies. He uses this really powerful, repeating phrase for every nation he condemns. For 3 sins, even for 4. Now, this creates a rhythm, a pattern. It sets an expectation in the listener's minds. Okay, he's going to list 4 big crimes for each of these nations. First up, Damascus, the capital of their longtime enemy, the Arameans. He calls them out for horrific cruelty in war. You can just imagine the crowd in Israel nodding, cheering him on. Yeah, get him, Amos. But here is the first little clue that something's up. He promises 4 crimes, but he only lists 1. It's a tiny detail so subtle you'd almost miss it, but it's a sign that he is in total control of this argument. Next, he moves on to the Philistines and Tyre. Their crime? Human trafficking on an industrial scale. And again, these are outright foreigners, so the audience in Israel is feeling this surge of self-righteous agreement. Amos is just confirming everything they already thought about their wicked neighbors. And once again, the count is off. He promises 4 sins, but only delivers 1 or 2. He is intentionally leaving the list incomplete, building this subconscious tension while reeling his audience deeper and deeper into agreement. Okay, so Amos has the crowd completely on his side. Now he starts tightening the circle. He moves from those foreign enemies to nations that were, well, basically family. He condemns Edom, their brother nation, then Ammon and Moab, who were also relatives. And the crimes are just horrific. They're personal, betraying family, unthinkable wartime atrocities, desecrating the dead. You can just feel the moral outrage in the crowd building with every word. So you see the strategy taking shape, right? Geographically and relationally, Amos is spiraling inwards. He's moving from far-off enemies to their estranged cousins, all while keeping up that strange, incomplete list of sins. The noose is tightening, oracle by oracle, and the crowd has no idea. The list hits its 7th nation. Now, in the ancient world, the number 7 is a big deal. It often means completion, perfection. So the audience would have been leaning in, thinking, okay, this is it, the grand finale. And who is number 7? Judah, his own home country, Israel's southern rival. The crowd in the north must have loved this. They must have been ecstatic. Even the southerner admits his own people are guilty. This feels like total victory. This must be the end. But it's not the end. Just when they think it's all over, Amos delivers a shocking 8th judgment. He pivots, points the finger directly at them, and uses the exact same formula he just used on their worst enemies. And bam, the trap is sprung. And here's the punchline. For Israel, and only for Israel, Amos finally delivers the full list of crimes. He details how they trample the poor, deny justice to the needy, how they're corrupt to the core. The entire sermon, the rhythm, the pattern, it was all a setup from the very beginning. It was designed to make them agree with their own condemnation. So let's just step back for a second and appreciate the sheer genius of this. It's a rhetorical masterpiece. He got an entire nation to listen to and actively cheer for their own judgment. Remember that day of the Lord they were so excited for? Amos completely flips it on its head. He basically says, "You want the day of the Lord? Oh, it's coming. But it's not a day of light for you. It's a day of darkness. The judgment you were just cheering for, that's not for them. That's for you." This four-step structure is what makes the trap so devastatingly perfect. By the time he revealed his real target, it was too late. He had used their own cheers, their own sense of justice, to force them to hear a message they would have rejected in a heartbeat if he'd said it up front. And then came the terrifying confirmation. Just 2 years after Amos delivers this sermon, a massive earthquake hits the region, so huge it was remembered for generations. Now, for his ancient audience, this was not a coincidence. This was a divine sign, a cosmic underline on the prophet's warning. Judgment wasn't just a threat, it was on its way. It all comes back to this one line from Amos. It perfectly captures the raw power of his message. This wasn't just some shepherd's opinion he was sharing. This was a roar from God himself. A warning so powerful and so terrifying that it simply could not be ignored. And that leaves us with the same haunting question that Amos forced on his audience, a question that echoes right down to today. What happens when we are so convinced of our own goodness, our own rightness, that we become blind? It's a chilling thought and a masterful lesson in how to deliver an unwelcome truth.